Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Joe and today I'm joined by Fantasy Football Scout Deputy Editor Tom Freeman, who will be revealing his Game Week 7 team. Welcome, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks, Joe. Yeah, bit happy after Semenyo's goal last night. We'll talk about my game week in a bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was very, very pleasing. Good performance. But yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, how are you? You all
Yeah,
right?
good. Yeah, I mean, we both got red arrows, but
Yeah,
I think you'll probably be quite pleased with your team. I'm certainly quite pleased with my team, despite getting a red
yeah,
arrow. It feels quite good going forward. And that Semenya goal was good. I benefited from that as well, which very
same.
much needed.
Yeah.
And I posted something on X actually about that. That it reminded me. Do you remember that year when? A lot of us had got Stefan Sessignon in, who was
Whoa.
Sunderland's talisman at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And we were all relying on him doing something.
Yeah,
By we, I mean those that had sort of followed the stats and Fantasy Football
yeah.
Scout then, I think it was the last minute he
I
finally
can.
got a return,
Yeah, I can remember
and it
this.
was it
Yeah.
was it was such a moment of celebration. But with Semenyo, I felt it was just going to happen soon. So, but yeah,
Yeah, I thought Southampton they started off okay, but they always look vulnerable even when they're
yeah,
playing okay because they're playing it out
yeah.
from the back. Bournemouth obviously great pressing, and we were maybe unlucky not to get more than seven
Yeah,
points, I think. But
yeah, definitely. They're a
yeah,
team that do not like going behind. They drop.
yeah,
So,
yeah. He said that after the match, the
yeah,
manager didn't he? He said they just folded.
yeah, and they've done that every time
Yeah,
this season.
yeah,
Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look, as Tom said, a brief look back at game week 6. We'll also look at the fixtures going forward for assess Tom's plans. We're going to have a little look at the captaincy, see who the worst defences are, because even though a lot of people will captain Haaland, there is a lot of choice this
yeah.
time. We'll look at the best attacks as well, and then Tom will reveal his team as well. Before we do that, just a plug for the members area. Any stats you see here, fixtures, tickets, etc. It's all from the members area at Fantasy Football Scout. Do check that out, fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. Look for the members offers, very reasonable for the year, to help you climb up your mini leagues. Also, do press that like button. And do remember to subscribe and do leave us a lovely 5-star review if you're listening to the podcast version. Okay, let's have a look at your game week 6. So it shows, yeah, I'll put a picture of a disappointed looking Saka on the screen. It's 44 points, so like me, below average. The average was
Yeah.
dead on 50. Do you want to just run through your team and who? Yeah, why perhaps you're actually okay with your team even though it didn't do
Okay.
so well.
Yeah, sure. So going through the team back to front, Sells got 2 points in goal. Further blanks in defence, Lewis 2, Gabriel 1, and Collins 2. Midfield, I had Saka 3, Umbomo 9, Luis Diaz 2, and Semenyo got 7. And then up front, Solanke got 6, as did Havertz. But then Haaland, captain blank, just the 4 points. Bench did okay. Fabianski didn't get anything, obviously didn't play, but Rogers got 7, Porro got 5, and then Greaves
Yeah,
got 0 after
yeah,
conceding a couple against Villa. So 44 points
yeah,
overall. Bit underwhelming, but I think like you alluded to earlier, Joe, I like the team.
yeah,
I'd pick it again,
yeah,
and I think you've just got to put it down to a bad game week.
yeah,
I think the fact that Palmer scored 4. And he did appear in a few teams. People who have maybe wildcarded the week before or earlier in the season probably had him. It didn't. I know some people went with him on a game week 6 wildcard. It didn't make as much sense to me given the fixtures. I prioritise Haaland and Saka for
yeah,
that for those reasons. So suddenly, then you get a player getting 25 points. You look at my team and it doesn't look quite
no,
as impressive at all. But I like it. I mean, I
yeah,
think defense really disappointed me more than anything because obviously Lewis played in that central
yeah,
midfield role, didn't he?
yeah,
Gabriel at home to Leicester, but I mean, 5 of my 8 attackers scored this week.
yeah.
It's just weren't the hauls that we were hoping for. No.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I got 4 attacking returns from my attackers, but a lower score than you. But I was talking to FPL General on his team selection video. He did much better than both of us. He's got Palmer.
Yeah,
Um, But he also said, weirdly, we came out of that with him actually being unhappier with his team than I am. With mine,
Okay, right.
because he's got a 3-5-2 with a
Yeah,
4.5 striker that no one's ever heard of.
yeah, I didn't like that.
Whereas your team and mine as well, you've got those price points locked in there, and you've probably got players in mind that you can move to, and there's money there floating around in, say, Luis Diaz or Havertz or Solanke, where
Yeah,
you can generate money to move
yeah,
perhaps Saka to Salah, for example, when he plays
yeah.
Brighton's defence in a couple of weeks.
Did have there was a small period last week where I did look at a 3-5-2 with a 4.5 striker, but I just didn't like it
No,
because I wanted Solanke, who you can see in my team
yeah,
now. Havertz will probably go after game week 8 once
yeah,
Arsenal's fixtures turn, but I can drop down a little bit, put a
yeah,
little bit more into the midfield, like you say, if I want to go Saka to
yeah,
Salah or whatever I decide. So I didn't like the 3-5-2 for that reason. Mark's obviously done really well out of it, though.
yeah,
It enabled him to get
yeah.
Palmer. And to be honest, you can build your transfers now. 2, 3
Yeah,
transfers gives you a bit more flexibility, doesn't it? So I'm
yeah.
sure it'll work be fine for him. It's just
Oh
that's
yeah.
what my reasons why I wasn't so keen on it.
No, no, that's it. And so it's just you got to sort of play your own way and what you feel
Yeah, yeah.
comfortable with. And yeah, I mean, we'll come to the end of the season, and the FPL General will win it, and we'll be like nowhere, and we'll still be maintaining. We're really happy with our teams, but nevertheless, yeah, you just got to go with what you're happiest with. And yeah,
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't have felt comfortable with a 4.5 striker or like a Harry Winks or someone like that. Let's have a look at the fixtures for the next few, well, up to game week 13, because this shows a sort of pattern of where we might use our transfers. And you mentioned about game week 8, there's a bit of a change there. So, for example, Bournemouth's fixtures stiffen for a little bit, so
Yeah.
Semenyo can either be removed or benched, perhaps, against Arsenal. Aston Villa and Man City over the next 3 from game week 8 onwards. Meanwhile, Arsenal, they still have a good run away to Bournemouth. But then game week 9, they've got home to Liverpool, then the Newcastle, Chelsea, so it's not as good. So that's when I'm starting to think perhaps Saka back up to Salah, because that coincides with Liverpool. Obviously play Arsenal in game week 9, but in game week 10 they've got Brighton at home, Aston Villa at home, Southampton away.
Yeah.
Aston Villa obviously good side at the moment, Brighton an attacking side, but all three of
Yeah, but
those
we'll concede.
defences
Yeah.
are there for the taking, Brighton especially, and
Yeah.
Southampton there. So yeah, that's the pattern I've sort of looked at. Anything else that you noticed over the sort of coming game weeks where you might be using your transfers?
Similar to you, Joe, looking at that Arsenal swing and maybe kind of getting off the attackers for that. I
Yeah.
think you've had a bit of joy holding Gabriel through tougher fixtures this
Oh,
season, Joe.
I'm
The
holding,
defender,
yeah,
yeah,
holding
the
him all the way through
defender
this.
doesn't feel like as much of a problem.
No.
But certainly Havertz and Saka. Liverpool, I don't mind those fixtures at all. I mean, I've got Diaz now, and it's going to be, I think with Diaz, we're going to face a week to week decision with him because if he's benched in the UCL against Bologna on Wednesday, you're probably a bit more confident of a start at Palace. But then he goes to South America for the
Yeah.
internationals. We're going to have that willy won't he when he comes back. But if I do have to hold him, I think Brighton, Villa home,
Yeah.
Southampton away, they're good fixtures. I didn't go for McNeil in my wild card. He was in when we spoke this time last week, and I moved him in the end to Semenyo, which I'm not disappointed about. Semenyo looked great,
I did
but
the
again,
same thing. Yeah.
yeah. But then you look at those Everton fixtures, and they're very good. Maybe there'd be an opportunity to bring him in. I don't think I'd look at it this week, but then you look at that Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, West Ham
Yeah.
games. 3 of them are away, but against really poor defences.
Yeah.
So there might be an opportunity there. Wolves fixture swing coming up as well, and Tottenham as well. Better fixtures, I think, than that gives you the credit for really there because
Yeah.
they're kind of upper mid-table, aren't they?
Yeah.
But I think there's some really nice I mean, that's why I got Porro and Solanke
Yeah.
because I wanted them in place.
Yeah, I mean, I had Van der Ven on my
Yeah.
earlier draft, but
Oh, no,
I'm
yeah.
sort of I'm actually pleased I didn't stick with him because I definitely would have benched him in favour of
Yeah,
Conser
yeah,
this week. That was
yeah.
my option, but I'm pleased I recommended him because
Yeah, it's a
and
good
he
pick.
does have attacking a threat. Yeah, what I'm sort of looking at is sort of game week 8 Diaz to a Spurs midfielder or McNeil.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then looking at Havertz game week 9 to Cunha, because Wolves fixtures, that's when Wolves fixtures turn Brighton
nice.
away. And that lasts until sort of Boxing Day. And that gives enough money the following week to do Saka to Salah, which is exactly when I wanted.
Yeah, it's a nice little plan.
Fingers crossed that plan comes to fruition. But yeah,
Have you got 2 free transfers this week, Joe?
No, I'm
just
going.
one?
I'm going to have 2 free. I'm going to
That's
save it, but I will from game week 8.
Yeah.
And in hand there. So yeah, it's interesting. There's lots of potential moves there. Let's go dip back to this week. Now, when we show your team, it's going to say Haaland captain. My team will have Haaland captain. He's at home to Fulham.
Yeah.
He'll be 160, 170% owned, effective owned because of the captaincy. But there are other options as well. So I thought we'd go sort of have a old focus back on captaincy this week.
Yeah.
So I've looked at the worst defences. There's a lot of worse defences than Fulham, but at the same time, there's a lot of captaincy options here. All of these could absolutely bang. And that is the tale of the season. You've got to try and get the one that Palmer owners got lucky last week. Who knows? Perhaps it'll be Solanke owners this week. But yeah, looking at the worst defences, Leicester are the worst. And Semenyo is actual captaincy, I think.
Yeah, I think Leicester, whenever I watch them this year, they're competitive.
Yeah.
They're not getting blown away, even against Arsenal. But I think obviously they conceded close to 5 XG at the weekend.
Yeah.
So that's what happens on these tables, isn't it?
Yeah.
Catapulted down to the bottom. I've got that decision though on Semenyo this week. We'll have a look at my team in a bit. I don't think Bournemouth are going to go and put 3 or 4 past Leicester,
okay.
but I think they could go and score a couple.
Yeah.
And Semenyo, I think people are slowly starting to realise what a good player he is.
He's really good.
I owned him as a 4.5 forward a lot last year, and he did really well for me in the double game week for Bournemouth. And I just think he feels like a player that could play, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but he could play for a team in Europe. And
he's very good.
Whether or not it's the captaincy, I think that's probably a bit too much for me. But good fixture, good player.
Yeah, I know Andy Nash, I talk with a lot on social media. He's a Bristol City fan. He's been going on about Semenyo for a long time, for good reason there. So I think he is an option there. In terms of worst defences, Brentford are actually a worst defence, but I don't think we're going to be looking at... well, it could be. Wolves could be an option there. Ipswich as well, also there for the taking. So that elevates West Ham, but West Ham don't seem that good as an attacking option. So the next best is Southampton defence, as in the next worst. Sorry, with so that propels Saka into it, and we saw what can happen. I mean, I've got Saka and Havertz. You have 2. I've got Gabriel as well. I mean, I feel confident going into this. So I think Saka is a realistically good. I mean, he's got such a. I'm talking to their player Jeremy. He's got such a great floor. He's going to get points no matter what. It's just how many.
I mean, it even looked like, even without doing anything, he was going to get maximum bonus for a period of the weekend, which tells you what his underlyings were like. But Southampton are just by far the worst team in the division defensively, aren't they? I know that Leicester are above it here, but just from watching them, the eye test tells me that this is a team which are there for the taking every week.
Yeah, definitely. So that elevates Saka. Definitely there. I'm strongly considering him. I think he's my vice captain at the moment.
Same. I think we've got to give him a bit of thought. They play PSG tonight. But I don't think with an international break after the weekend, Arteta is going to be managing minutes or anything like that. He's going to play if he's fit, isn't he? So.
I mean, Watkins are definitely an option at Manchester United.
I mean, I think that we'll do well at home. United look open, don't they?
Yeah.
Like last season. We've got Bayern tonight. So that would maybe concern me a touch, depending on, but because you've obviously got John Duran there now, he's been paired with Watkins, but at the weekend it might be a case of Watkins plays 60 and Duran comes on for the last 30 to keep it fresh. Okay. That wouldn't surprise me.
I'll sort of skip over West Ham and Everton as worst defences. Next one is Brighton. That will come as no surprise that for Parma owners. So they're in this very eye-catching position where they play an exceptional high line and they have a manager that absolutely refuses to alter that no matter what, which we also saw with the Spurs manager when they went down they just said we're still going to play a high line.
It's a bit like Emery at Villa as well in the early days when we were getting caught playing out from the back. It's that non-negotiable philosophy, isn't it? So,
was it Leicester against Southampton? Was it 9-0 or something? Same thing. Southampton just, I mean, they were battered, but they just kept playing the way they played. So that makes Solanke and all sorts of Spurs assets really good to own, I think, for this week. I haven't seen any evidence that the manager's going to change anything at Brighton.
No, well, I mean, it had been working to a degree, hadn't it, Joe? Before that, I mean, everybody was very big on Brighton, and I don't think anybody looked at the
attack's fine.
And I think you had a couple of key injuries at the back at the weekend, didn't you? With Veltman going out, and who was the other? Webster came in, didn't he? Van Hecker was out. I think that obviously played a part too.
Playing a high line with Dunk and Webster's pretty bad, but a high line with Van Heck and Dunk a bit better. Not playing a high line at all would be better. Solanke.
And then was it Kadioglu who came in at right back? And he's obviously, when you're playing a high line and you need everybody to be 100% in tune, don't you? And that's difficult when you bring new players into it.
Definitely. So Solanke is a serious captaincy option here. I'm going to skip over Wolves and Newcastle. The next one, Salah, could be a good option against Crystal Palace. Has done well traditionally at Crystal Palace. He could be the Palmer of this week. Not just in 4 goals, but he's definitely a strong captain option. And the reason I mention this is there's still teams out there without Haaland, and there are good, especially because he blanked at the weekend. So further down the list, Haaland's against Fulham. Now Fulham are actually one of the best defences so far. Their expected goals conceded, I've sorted this by expected goals conceded. So as point of reference, Leicester expected goals conceded 12.8. They have conceded 12. Fulham conceded 5. The expected goals conceded 6.6. So they do have one clean sheet as well. I think you just got to look at attack really and hope that they gel. But I don't feel as confident going into this. Perhaps it's because he blanked last week. But Fulham's defences, they're not bad.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. They look okay. They look pretty organised at the moment. They haven't come up against an attack as good as City's. But it wouldn't surprise me if it was a two goals for City maybe at the weekend, maybe 3. But I think even if City scored 2, Haaland's just got everything just goes through him at City, doesn't it? So if they are going to score a couple, you back him to be involved. He scored a hat-trick against Fulham last season, but obviously it was in this corresponding fixture, but it was obviously a different personnel in the Fulham team. But I'm still finding it hard to look past Haaland as an owner. I think if you've got a £15.3 million asset who's done as well as he has at home this year, Fulham, let's not, it's not Arsenal's defence or anything like that. They can go and concede 2 or 3, I'm sure. So that's where I'm at currently.
Yeah, definitely. And further down the list, I was actually looking at Arsenal. Actually, Fulham's defence is marginally better than Arsenal's, according to the stats. But they're very similar.
I think the red cards and Arsenal have had a tough start as well, haven't they? Yeah,
that's true. And Fulham have had a very good start. Moving down as well, last one I'm going to mention is Palmer against Nottingham Forest, and this is what would put me if I was an owner. So if I had Palmer and Haaland, I'd probably still maybe favour Haaland, favour Salah or Saka. It's just because Nottingham Forest defence, it's not going to be as easy as against Brighton. I think they'll score. I think Chelsea will win, but I don't think it'll be 4 goals. Nottingham Forest have conceded 5 all matches, 6 matches conceded 5. So Brighton almost conceded that alone against Palmer last week. And their expected goals conceded 5.4. So I don't know. If you own Palmer, would you captain him on the back of what you've seen? Or would you look at stats like this and go, actually, Forest are quite good defence? 3rd best.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an owner, you're faced with that decision, aren't you? Whether it's like a form or a fixture kind of thing. It's not a terrible fixture, you know. Chelsea are at
Oh
home; they're
yeah,
looking really good in attack, aren't they?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I just think that Forest will probably they won't maybe be quite as naive as Brighton. And Palmer's stats in the first few weeks hadn't been amazing at
no,
all. You know, he had been struggling for shots in the box a little bit. But no, I think if I was a Palmer opener, I'd be very thankful for the points at the weekend. I'd keep him. I wouldn't,
yeah,
obviously going to play him. But I think I'd probably put Saka and Haaland
yeah,
above him in that list. And you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Palmer carries on ticking over it because they've got tough fixtures, Chelsea. I think
yeah,
they'll tick over.
yeah,
Palmer will get a few goals, I'm sure, but maybe just not those monster
yeah.
hauls, which he or
Yeah.
the haul like one at the weekend.
Just before we look at your team, I'm just going to just a quick reminder on the best attacks so far. Which is why I was talking about Solanke as a viable option. Tottenham,
Yeah,
in fact, in terms of expected goals, the best attack,
yeah,
13.7. More than Liverpool, who are second, 12.6. Man City, 12.4. Chelsea 12.2. So they're in a group of their own. These four
yeah,
really. These are the top ones. Manchester United, weirdly, are
yeah,
pretty good. 10.6. Then Arsenal 10.3. Bournemouth 10.1. So there's another group there. Semenyo, Bournemouth. That's why I was talking about them. Aston Villa 9.5. They have scored 12 goals, so they've been overperforming marginally. Brighton attack fine. 10 goals, expected goals 9.1. And then further down, Leicester, Ipswich, Wolves, Everton, and Brentford are actually the worst attacks. But with Brentford, you've got a talisman there. So if they're going to score, if
yeah.
they are scoring,
Mm.
you know it's, well, you don't know, but you hope
There's a good
it's a
chance.
good
Yeah,
chance it will be Brian and Bomo there. So I just
yeah.
thought I'd highlight that as to why some of those captaincy shouts are being mentioned. Right, let's have a look at your game week 7 team. How are you set up? What potential changes are you going to make, and or perhaps changes not going to make, but with a view to potential changes later on?
Yeah, so I've got a 3-4-3 for this week. I've got Sells in goal, Porro, Gabriel, and Lewis in defence, Saka and Bomo, Diaz and Semenyo in midfield, and then Solanke, Captain Haaland, and Havertz up front. Fabianski, Rogers, Collins, and Greaves on the bench. I've got a couple of selection kind of 50-50s at the moment. You can see Rogers is on the bench at the moment. I think if Diaz was going to be benched and we get news, it's the early kickoff Liverpool on Saturday, so we might get a bit of news filtering through. That's an easy switch if Diaz is on the bench. I could potentially sell Diaz though, because if he's benched at the weekend and then he's off to Colombia, if I wanted to preserve team value, which isn't always I don't always pay that much attention to it, but that's a consideration. So I could make a switch there potentially, maybe for a Spurs midfielder,
Yeah.
Brennan Johnson, Madison, Kulusevski. There's loads of options, isn't there? There. And another one is Rico Lewis. You know, is he going to start in that same role? Is he going to play at right back? You know, I've got Collins on the bench there who could easily come in as well at home to Wolves. So, couple of decisions to make with
Okay.
that. I think ideally I'd save. I've got 2 free transfers and I've got 0.4 million in the bank. So to go into game week 8 with 3 free transfers would put me in a good position, I think.
Yeah.
Because then I can start preparing for those Arsenal swings
Yeah.
and Semenyo if I want to. I could bench Semenyo
Yeah.
for 3 weeks with Rogers, but maybe I want to switch him out and go for something different. Feels a little bit template the team at the moment, but so it might be nice to freshen it up in a couple of areas, maybe.
Yeah, I mean with Diaz, so if you get a rumour Diaz is out, yeah, Rogers could just come in and you could bench Diaz and then
Yeah,
make the decision later, or you could just make
yeah,
a swap.
good.
Now, I'm very similar. Brennan Johnson would be on my radar because because he's much cheaper and it just puts money
Yeah,
into that sort of Salah fund if I want him.
yeah,
I'm going to
absolutely.
play Rogers this week, and I'm going to have Chris Wood as my first sub. So you know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Chris Wood
would
goal,
you?
Rogers blank.
Yeah, I think no, I think this is a good fixture for Rogers. Would you play him if Diaz is starting, Joe? Would you play Rogers over? Probably it would have to be Semenyo. Would you
No,
play Semenyo? You would play
I'll
Semenyo
play
over
Semenyo.
Rogers.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
definitely talisman for the tie.
yeah.
I think Bournemouth will score. He is the most likely at the moment to be on the score sheet.
And then another question: Porro or Collins feels very finely poised because okay, Brighton are there for the taking, maybe, but they're probably going to score against
I don't
Spurs, aren't
know.
they?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons I didn't go for Porro, because with Van de
Mm.
Ven, who I was more inclined for, I just feel I'd be more inclined to bench them for those. Brighton's attack is pretty good. Yeah, I think I don't
It's
know,
hard.
because Wolves' attack's really good as well. But I suppose you might play an ownership game. There's going to be a lot of Flecken owners, so if you think they're going to get a
Yeah,
clean sheet, I just think Porro's potential. It's less attacking threat, but it's a potential of attacking threat.
yeah. I think I'll need an attack in
Yeah,
return from Porro.
yeah,
And it's just if Collins has obviously got a little bit of set piece threat, but I'm relying on the clean
yeah.
sheet with
No,
them more.
yeah.
And
I think
I don't really trust
yeah.
Brentford at the moment for clean sheets.
I,
But
I think you sort of stick with the plan. You got Porro in for a reason,
mm,
for that
yeah,
potential of attacking threat. So go with
yeah,
that.
yeah. Mm.
Okay, well, good luck with your game week. Good luck everyone watching and listening. We'll be back next. We'll be back next week. Hang on,
Well,
no,
it's international break,
international
isn't
break.
it?
We'll
So
be back the week after next.
yeah,
Although, yeah, I don't know what the schedule is yet. But yeah,
I
we'll be
can't.
back at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah. I don't think it will be next week because
No.
I think we're having to have a bit of a scout meetup. So I know a few of us are kind of getting together on that
Oh,
Tuesday,
okay.
but then the week after,
Yeah,
when we've maybe firmed up our plans for
yeah.
game week 8, I can definitely do it
Great
then.
stuff. Excellent. Well, I'll see you then, and good luck everyone. Take care. See you soon.
Cheers, Joe.